Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel this afternoon. I'll declare the meeting open at 1:04 p.m. In doing so, I acknowledge we are hosting the meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with Development Assessment Panel Standing Orders and DAF Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website, and during the meeting, panel members may refer to technical devices to assist them in considering the information before them. My name's Jean Coltaz. I'm presiding member for this afternoon's meeting. To my left is Francesca Lafanti, Deputy Presiding Member. To her left is Dale Page as our specialist member today. And from the City of Swan, we have online Councillor Rod Henderson and Councillor Charlie Zanino in the meeting. Apologies, Councillor Mel Congreston from the City of Swan. And item 3 on the part A of the agenda, noting of minutes. Minutes of previous meetings are on that website. Part B of the meeting, item 1, is a declaration of due consideration. And panel members need to have considered all the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and Part B related information. Could I please have confirmation by show of hands? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 2 on Part B, disclosure of interest. Councillors, was this item discussed at a council meeting or briefing? No, thank you.
Chairman, this one wasn't, but it's of course stage 1 was some time ago, but it's a separate application.
That's fine. Thank you. Do any panel members have any other disclosures of interest? If not, move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the stage 2 of the proposed educational establishment on 9,000 Masonry Way, Malaga. We do have one presenter on behalf of the applicants, Mr. Murray Castleton from SLR Consulting. Murray, you have 3 minutes to make your presentation. We've had access to it previously, so if you speak to it rather than reading it all. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to address the panel and to the City's officers for working closely with us on this application. My name is Murray Castleton and I'm a town planner from SLR. With me today, I have the following client representatives and key members of the project team who will be available to answer any questions the panel might have. Emad Michal and Dr. Rateb Junaid from Alamein College, these guys are all to my left. Andrew Durkin from Bridge 42, who are the project managers. Darren Levy from Yuloff and Associates Traffic Engineer. Amron Broderick from TRCB Architects, who's the design architect. And Renee Young, one of my colleagues from SLR, who is also a town planner. The applicant is generally happy with the approval recommendation and is comfortable with the proposed conditions, with the exception of condition number 22 relating to public art contributions. We also have some reservations about the required contribution to the roundabout at the intersection of Bonner Drive and Beach Road, on the basis that the wording of the condition as provided is not sufficiently certain and would not pass the typical validity tests applied to a planning condition. In saying that, it is essential that the approval of the proposed development not be held up if key delivery timeframes are to be met, and the intention is to work through this matter with the City in due course. The applicant requests that condition number 22 related to public art contributions be deleted, or at a minimum, that the public art contribution requirement be reduced on the basis that the proposal will deliver significant and direct community benefit through the provision of a well-located new high school for the Islamic community of Perth. In our view, all reasonable efforts and concessions should be made to assist with the viable delivery of stage 2 of the school for the benefit of this community. Alamein has already made a significant $150,000 contribution to public art through the condition that was imposed on the stage 1 development. This art contribution has been appropriately applied to the key public frontage of the stage 1 site on Masonry Way, integrated into paving, fencing, paving and both screen and shade structures. The stage 2 development is predominantly located to the rear of the site, and when compared to stage 1 has very limited interface with the public realm on Masonry Way. This means that the stage 2 development site lacks the public space or an appropriate interface to accommodate new additional public art contributions. A cash in lieu contribution, which results in the delivery of public art elsewhere, would not benefit the site, locality or school community, with these funds more appropriately used for other purposes to directly benefit staff and students. The public art contribution amount is excessive based on currently escalated construction costs, and its impact on the feasible delivery of the development will also be compounded given other obligations, potentially including the need to contribute to a new roundabout at the aforementioned intersection. Rising construction costs are putting increased pressure on the not-for-profit sector to deliver new developments such as schools. Additional financial obligations such as public art contributions make it increasingly difficult to deliver feasible developments without compromising on other essential components and facilities that the school would like to provide for the benefit of the school community. Alameen College is a not-for-profit low-fee paying school. In this regard, it is noted that panels have supported the waiver of the public art requirement previously, where the development was for a not-for-profit organisation for both Horizon House and for RAFA. As a local planning policy, provision of public art is due regard document. It is not binding on the panel, and it is open to you to vary its application in this instance. In conclusion, when applied to this development, the condition is contextually not justified, and planning policy allows discretion with clear reasons for departure in this case. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our deputation, and the project team would be pleased to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Castleton. Panel members, are there any questions of Mr. Castleton? Yes, Member Page.
Just a couple. So do you have any idea of the timing of future stages of the development?
Beyond stage 2?
Beyond stage 2, yeah.
I'll need to probably put them to my clients. Do we have any? I'll just direct that to the appropriate.
Right. If you're not certain, it's fine. I'm just.
On behalf of the school, stage 3 and so forth is actually now very much struck off until we comply by the agreement we have with the council to actually acquire an access to the other side of the school block because of the traffic management and so on. So at this stage, we're at that stage and very much it until we actually be able to access the other side of the property through a purchase for another block and so on. So at the moment, not really. So there is future plans, a small master plan, but it all actually ends until we can actually achieve a block of access to the other side, so we can actually commit to the commitment that we gave to the council on stage 1 in writing, saying that we cannot go to stage 3 or 4 in the future unless we do wire access, more traffic areas.
I can perhaps expand on that. So I think the upshot is that that's on any future stages are on hold without a defined delivery time frame. There's a strip of industrial properties that run to the, I'm going to say to the east. Yeah, to the east of the development site. And to resolve traffic management and access for future stages, a link needs to be provided through one of those industrial properties through to Oakley Drive, and the school at the moment is just going through the process of looking to secure one of those lots to obtain that access, and that will unlock the potential for future stages.
Sorry, Murray, one more thing. That stage 2 itself is a staged up stage, so we're not looking at finalizing the last bit of stage 2 until 2030 or so. So you're over the next 4 to 5 years is actually stage 2 anyway. So as we are non-for-profit, very limited funding, we have to sort of stage our bills and so on as per what the school actually can afford financially.
2030 plus.
Just on the proposed upgrade works roundabout that has been mentioned, has the scope of that work been discussed with you in any detail? The scope of those upgrades?
Only that there's a concept plan which has been provided to the DAP. We'd only talked about it in conceptual terms about the possibility of a roundabout.
Okay, so it's very early thinking about what that may be.
Yes.
Okay, then.
Thank you. Yes, councillor Zane.
Just a clarification, I suppose. Forgive my ignorance if I've missed it, but on one of the maps, it's got your main parking area, which has got 154 parking bays. And then it's got future playing field. And next to it, it's got future grassed area. If that's going to become a future playing field, where's the main parking going to be?
I don't know this. So you're referring to the future master plan or virtual master plan, and that master plan, in fact, reflect the fact that the car park itself will become a multi-level car park that will take more in that section. So in fact, that's why it would actually replace that section. So if that's assuming we go into stage 3 and 4 and so forth, but for that particular stage, it's all clear to be used for grass versus the extra parking that we require for stage 2.
Where's the multi-deck parking going to be?
Where the car park is at the moment.
Where it is at the moment, but it says here, future playing field.
So this was a master plan developed at the request of the DRP to show how the future stages 3 and 4 could be envisaged to fit on the site should the school secure additional land to the east, which frees up, which will, one, deliver additional land to accommodate parking, but also assist in the egress and from the school, and it would allow that existing at-grade car park, which will remain for what's approved in stage 1, will remain for stage 2 to become multi-deck with a playing field on top.
So the temporary parking gets removed, and then there's stacking in a multi-level car park on what the permanent car parking.
So the playing field is going to be on top of the car park.
That's what's currently envisaged for a future stage beyond the current stage that we're looking at here today.
There's nothing set in stone. It's just we had to come up with some kind of a futuristic potential if we go to stage 3 or 4. When that actually happens, obviously the architects and stuff would be joining to come up with a solution to all the stuff and the car park, the ground level, above the level of grounds and so on. It also depends on what property we get in the access to the other side of the building anyway. So it's quite wide open to sort of futuristic sort of planning and so on. But for stage 2, it's all in there on the ground anyway.
It's a potential solution.
The potential solution to what
rather than a resolved,
have.
rather than a resolved solution.
Thank you. Yes.
My question relates to traffic and parking. I'm not sure who wishes to answer that. The report talks about varying student levels with student numbers within different categories of classrooms. And it talks about staggering finish times so that it can be managed in terms of the traffic flow. My question specifically relates to how is that in practice through an operational plan managed where families have children in different age brackets, and how does that actually work with the continuation of traffic flow as opposed to essentially groupings of parents waiting till the last child comes out and therefore is holding?
We accounted for that in the analysis. So we had data from the existing school. We had very thorough survey data from there that showed the amount of carpooling and multiple student families. And so we were able to integrate all of that in our justification of how many bays were provided. So we do have in the analysis a chunk of families that are assumed to arrive when the youngest age groups are let out, and to be parked in the car park all the way through until the oldest ones are out. And there's different ranges and assumptions of those combinations. And that's all been factored into the analysis. And that's why there's so many car bays on the site, pardon me, as well as a big pick-up and drop-off area. So we've got a queuing free flow pick-up and drop-off for those that are just picking up at one time, come in and out, and there's queuing for 70 vehicles for that. And then there's the car park with 154 bays in it, which accounts for the youngest age groups where we're assuming parents will park and walk in, pick up the children and come back to the car, and also those that are staying for those linked trips that you've talked about between age groups.
Thank you.
Okay. any
Just one other
yes.
question.
Zanina?
Just with regards to the City of Swan asking for 13% contribution with regards to the upgrade of Beach Road and Drive. Happy and comfortable with that?
Look, it's probably fair to say we have some reservations about it. And I think we have some concerns that the structuring of the condition in its present form is not appropriate. But we're mindful of the issue, and the intent is to work closely with the city to resolve those issues. And if we need to come back to the panel, we will do so in due course to seek a modification of the condition in place of the present form, and we find issues with its implementation.
I can jump in on that. The 13% itself, is based on the traffic estimates. And we've checked the basis of that calculation. So we're satisfied that if the panel is going to apply that condition as a payment, that the 13% of the council's contribution is consistent with the analysis. So it basically represents the amount of traffic that the school, that the stage 2, that the school contributes to the intersection as a proportion of the total traffic using the intersection over the day. That's where the 13% comes from. And we're satisfied that that's the correct number if that condition is applied.
And it actually equates to a total, it's actually, I think it's about 4.3% of the total cost, because it's 13% of 1/3. So that's how I sort of rationalised it.
So you're accepting that for now?
Yes, I think that would probably be fair.
Are you accepting a 13% or a proportionate contribution?
Well, this comes down to the wording of the condition.
Yes.
We think the condition in its present form probably lacks a bit of certainty, but we're across what's required, and that's something that we'll work through with the city in the actual sort of practical application and clearance of the condition.
There's no one from the show here at council here at the moment, but is he? Okay. Well, the 13%, I'll find out. I've got a question as to where that came from, because that intersection, have you worked out the total traffic that uses the Bonner Drive? So that represents the school traffic coming out onto Bonner Drive. There is 4.5%, did you say?
So it's 13% of the total traffic on Bonner Drive. So there's traffic drawings in the report that show the different breakdown. And there's something, I think it was 1,300 thereabouts vehicles per day from the school using Bonner Drive, out of a total of about 10,000. So that's where the 13% comes from. And what the city have said is that under the black spot funding arrangement, they would be liable for 1/3 of the total cost. And therefore they're seeking 13% as the contribution from the school towards the 1/3 contribution that the city would be responsible for.
Do you know the total traffic that uses that portion at that intersection, what the total traffic is on? I think it's called Marshall Road at that point anyway. But
well, the calculation is using the figure on Bonner Drive, not the total intersection, because I suppose, and it's debatable, but like with a giveaway intersection as it is now, the amount of traffic on the main road, if there wasn't an intersection, there'd be no need to take into account those. So it's really about what happens on Bonner Drive, how much traffic is on Bonner Drive that is then triggering the thing. And I suppose the interesting part of all of this is that our analysis shows that the roundabout's actually not required from an operational point of view. It's actually more about safety, and the trigger for that has already been reached. And so there's debate about whether the roundabout's required irrespective of the school. And I guess that's why I say that from a calculation point of view, we do accept that the roundabout is suitable for this location and it's required, but it's required from a safety perspective that's already there, rather than being triggered by the school. However, the school is obviously contributing towards the traffic on the intersection, and that's where we're in agreement with the 13% from that perspective.
Okay, thank you.
But it is somewhat opportunistic because the roundabout, based on existing traffic levels, should be installed anyway. It's a matter that we intend to work through with the city in due course.
Okay. Any further questions?
Can I just clarify? And I was going to ask you the city's questions if we didn't have them, but I do believe we have them now. Is that 13%, the 13% of the total cost of that upgrade, or 13% of the 1/3 share?
The suggestion from the city is 13% of the city's 1/3 share.
So in looking at the numbers that were provided in the Reg 13 response, does that equate to around 220,000?
It depends whether whether the smaller figures already been integrated into the.
I'm not sure about, I have a question about that.
Yes, and I don't know the answer to that question. So it's either, if it has been, it's about 157,000. If it hasn't, then it's about 219,000. So
We'll ask the city. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. And no further questions of the presenters? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I noticed Mr. Russell had his hand up. So I've got a few questions. Whose idea is it to reduce the speed limit on Beach Road should the roundabout go in?
There was a comment in the traffic report about a possible reduction of speed as a means of improving safety of the existing intersections. That was the only reference made to reducing speed. I think if the roundabout were to go in, the speed limit is further along Beach Road where there's other roundabouts. I don't think there's any further speed reduction. So it was more about the fact that there's an existing safety issue right now. It already triggers the black spot requirements for something to be done. The roundabout is obviously the big cost item to change that. The other suggestions, if you take it to an extreme, you could ban the right turns in and out of Bonner Drive, and that would solve the safety problems, but it doesn't address the access issue. You can build a roundabout, but there's also commentary from main roads for these sorts of things, that reducing the speed reduces the severity of any crashes and therefore helps to improve the safety. And so in the traffic report, we identified several different means that could be done, and the roundabout is one of them.
So the reason I asked that question, Chairman, is that this is an industrial area, and the reason we have a 70k speed limit there is to allow reasonably efficient access through the area as a main arterial. To do that is obviously going to cause some impact. So what I'm effectively looking at here is that you're satisfied that your school is effectively going to impact the industrial area and its effective traffic flow. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so we've analysed from a traffic operational perspective that the school traffic can be added to the network, and it will all still operate within the accepted guidelines.
Okay. So from what I can see then, the City of Swan would have to contribute some 20% of the cost of the roundabout should state and federal funding be available. If that funding isn't available and is clearly a roadblock there and it's not working, what contingency do you have in mind?
That's a question that's best to the city's officers.
I think we'll discuss that with the city officers who instigated the proportional contribution.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the next question that came from that in my mind is, does the school pay rates?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Answer is yes.
And at what rate? Is it a commercial rate, industrial rate, or residential rate? How's the school rated?
As far as I know, it's not 100%, but it's a commercial rate.
Commercial. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any further questions? Yes,
again, traffic question. And my question's around peak period. Obviously, there's capacity of road, and then we have a series of peak periods occurring in any road network. There's a school peak, there's a trade peak, a office peak almost. Can you talk about the overlap of the peak, particularly in the context of the school, and the impact that you say the school contributes to the network functioning or impacts the network functioning? So not necessarily over the whole day, but those morning and afternoon peak.
Yeah. So we analysed the AM peak, existing AM peak coincides with the peak of the school. So in the AM, it's one and the same, and therefore the worst case, and we've analysed that in the report, all the intersection operations. In the PM, there's a little bit of differential between what the existing peak of the network is and when the overlapping peak of the school occurs. And as a result, we actually identified 2 PM peaks and analysed both of them to make sure that they both operated at acceptable levels, and that was the case.
No further questions? Okay, we'll move on to city staff. Is Mr. Russell available?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm available.
Can't see you at the moment, but we're working our way through to that.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Do you make any comment on what the presentations have, or would you rather just go straight to questions?
If I may, the first thing I must apologise. I have ascertained that the version of the report that was forwarded to you by the city was not the final version, and whilst it's largely the same report, what you've no doubt picked up on is that the version that you were sent didn't contain the condition for the contribution. It talks about it in the body of the RA, but doesn't contain it as a condition. It also doesn't contain the advice note that I provided for that condition, and I've heard talk today from the proponents and perhaps from some of the panellists as to the lack of certainty or clarity around what the condition requires. What I can say, and there was a Regulation 13 further request, but what I can say in the version of the report that you should have been sent with the condition, that the condition that was that I drafted says, prior to the occupation of the second stage of the school, which is subject to this approval, the owner is to make a proportionate contribution to the upgrade of the Beach Road and Bonner Drive intersection. The advice note in the version that I'd crafted that you should have been sent, and again I apologise, the advice note then goes on to say this. With respect to the proposed condition 5 is what I numbered it here, the proportionate contribution will be for 13% of 1/3 of the total cost of provision of a roundabout at the Beach Road and Bonner Drive intersection, 13% being the estimated proportion of daily traffic through this intersection attributable to the school. So I've heard some questions from various panellists to the proponent around the traffic volumes and the rest of it, and I'll say this as well. The volumes of traffic from the school at its peak period represent a greater proportion of total traffic through the intersection than 13%. You could say charitably, and I'll say it charitably, the school or the city has taken the lower figure, the lower proportion of traffic generated by the school through the intersection based on the percentage of total daily volumes as opposed to peak hour volumes where the school proportion of traffic would be higher. But that provides hopefully some clarity around the city's disposition with respect to a proportionate contribution for the school should there be any approval of this stage 2 application. And again, my apologies that clarity wasn't provided in the version that our office transmitted to the DAP Secretariat.
Thank you. Now, do we have any questions of Mr. Russell? Yes, Member Page.
So, Mr. Russell, that associated advice note that was omitted from the report, that wasn't included in your Reg 13 response either, was it?
No, the advice note wasn't provided, just the condition.
Right, okay, so this panel hasn't had the benefit of that advice note until you've just communicated it, is that correct?
That would be true.
Okay, so just if we can stick with traffic just for the minute. The applicant's traffic impact assessment, it talks about being based on expression of interest enrolment data that they have. The city modelled an alternative scenario. So could I query why that was done? And wouldn't the applicant's enrolment data that they have be reliable in determining traffic origins and destination?
You're talking about, what I'm saying, if we're talking about the inputs and the data that goes into formulating or considering a proportionate contribution, as I said, we've used the applicant's own figure from their own report with respect to 13%.
I'm not talking about that.
As has been affirmed.
Yep, I'm talking about some modelling. You disputed some of the modelling in the Responsible Authority report, and the applicant did some modelling based on the assumption that a lot of traffic would come from the south, and that was based on data they have about potential enrolments. The city's own report talks about you did alternative modelling that came up with different assumptions and results, and I'm just querying why you did that. Did you not believe that the data the school had was accurate or correct or appropriate?
The issue that the city had is that with the stage 1 application, there was a traffic impact assessment, admittedly by another consultant, not the same consultant as prepared this one. And so they used their estimations of traffic generated for the school, okay, both for that stage and ultimately. Subsequently, with this stage 2 application, the school has used a different traffic consultant and has used some predictions with respect to where traffic will come from in a spatial distribution. And those were at odds with what the city thought was a pretty logical proposition enshrined in the first traffic volume in terms of, well, I think they actually based it on census data that looked at the percentages of Islamic persons in the various parts of the locality around this site, and then drew some inferences or assumptions around where traffic is likely to come from those locations. So the problem that the city had is it had a differing set of assumptions from the outset with the stage 1 traffic report and the stage 2. So the city sought to find the city requested, which the applicant subsequently did, to provide an assessment that bridged the gap, so to speak, between the volumes and distribution of traffic under the scenario that they advanced in the stage 1 traffic impact assessment versus the stage 2. So I like to say we applied a bit of sensitivity analysis to the disparate traffic reports and arrived somewhat at a middle ground. And that's where we ended up with.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, looking at the wording of the draft condition that came through in your Reg 13 response, it doesn't include a dollar value or value of the works or the value of the proportionate contribution. So if I were an applicant, a condition committing me to a contribution without a value attached would make me a bit uncomfortable, given the uncertainty. So you've given us an estimate of the cost of the proposed works in response to our Reg 13 request. You provided a service relocation estimate of just under 1.5 million and a construction cost estimate of around 3.6 million. Are we to assume then that the applicant's contribution would be around 220,000 based on those numbers?
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, you don't need to assume. If you've got the numbers there, you can do the arithmetic. But there is there's a very deliberate reason why I haven't given you a number. And I'll share with you the city's disposition as a growth council that has on the books $1 billion worth of development contribution plans. We do not cite in any condition at any point in time the figure of a contribution. It is not important in fulfilling the requirements for the validity of a planning condition to establish need, nexus, and reasonableness. Okay? So costs can change. Now, certainly, for the purposes of being transparent with the applicant and in response to the Re-Regulation 13 request from the DAP Secretariat, the city provided the basis of the fundamental, we provided to the applicant a diagrammatic indication of the spec of the roundabout, and we provided a cost. The Regulation 13 request wanted a cost breakdown. We've provided those. There would be no point, and it would be extremely inappropriate, to submit a cost at this juncture in an environment where, as the panel would well know, we have rising inflation, and there is much valid fear and concern with respect to a significant increase in costs of materials that go into construction projects. Now, I've already had a discussion with the applicants, Ms. Young from Element, that it may well be in the proponent's best interest, if they accept this condition, if it's imposed, that they take the current best costs and seek to pay up now, because invariably and almost certainly they will be paying an amount far cheaper than what would be the ultimate cost in maybe 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years' time. But I haven't put a cost in for those reasons, because that is not the proper approach. If we put a cost in for our development contributions, we would be broke in the blink of an eye. So there's a sound, valid reason for not imposing a cost in it.
Thank you. So I understand not putting a cost in it when you have an underlying developer contribution plan that informs costs. But are you telling me you think it's that draft condition you've provided us passes the planning validity test by requiring a contribution, and that contribution could change significantly over time, or at the whim of the council, if you wish to do that? Do you think that is a valid planning condition in terms of meeting the tests of certainty and clarity?
I have said as much, yes.
Right, okay. Last question then from me in relation to traffic. When did you commence the process of applying for black spot funding? And have you factored your contribution into your 5-year capital works program in anticipation of a successful application?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any time frame for that?
Well, the time frame is indicated. We'd be hoping, as I said, the report indicates the time frame for when we hope to commence construction of the roundabout, and I've troubled for the enlightenment of the panel and for the applicant to indicate that we would hope to have the roundabout in place, the point in which the full volume of traffic from stage 2 starts to hit its straps, so that what we're not doing is exacerbating a dangerous intersection by the development of this school. So the timing coincides. I think the report indicates, let me have a look at the version I've sent you. I don't trust the version that you have, unfortunately. Okay, I'll read this to you, and I think it might be one and the same. The programming of the installation of the roundabout at the Beach Road and Bonner Drive intersection is during the 2028-29 financial year. This timing should ensure that the roundabout is in place before the maximum volume of school traffic generated by the full enrolment of stage 2 of the school occurs.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Russell, what is your contingency? And I think one of the other members asked this question. What if you're not successful with your black spot funding? What is the city's plans in that regard then?
Well, our residents and ratepayers will have to gird themselves as we have to find municipal funds to fund it.
Okay. I might park the... let me ask you this before I park the issue of traffic and contribution. And I'm just testing this with you as an option. Could it be possible in the first instance, and perhaps more appropriate, to seek some contribution when a proposal for a later stage comes forward? And that way you'll have more certainty about traffic origins, distribution, scope and cost of works required at that stage.
No.
Okay.
The report makes it clear, okay, there's a difference of opinion. We're saying that an already dangerous intersection, we're saying will be failing at stage 2. Even if we take the applicant's assumptions, they're saying it will fail. They're saying it will be level of service, I think, E.
Okay.
So given that we've talked about the difference between the assumptions of the two reports that leads the city to conclude it fails and the applicant to say it's at level E, we can't wait subsequently. And when no one wants to say, okay, well, we're going to put the roundabout in at any event. And for the reasons I've outlined, it may well be beneficial for the applicant to make their contribution now before costs go up.
Sure. So can I just
do it
test
that
with
way,
you?
but I wouldn't say it's to anyone's benefit, not least the applicants.
Right. So can I just, you're talking about that intersection failing already. When did that intersection start?
Sorry, I haven't said it's failing already. That's not what I've said.
What did you
That's
say?
not what I've said. I've said we project it to fail, okay, with the traffic from stage 2. We project it to fail.
So is
What
it
we have
only
already
projected?
at the moment, sorry, if you let me finish, what we have already at the moment, and I think the applicants touched on this, the intersection isn't failing at the moment, but we project that it will fail. Okay, the applicant says it will be just short of failing. What the problem is at the moment, which the applicant has raised, is you've got a safety issue with the numbers of 13 casualty crashes over the past 5 years. So we've already got an intersection that is failing from a safety point of view, as distinct from the level of service arrangement that the traffic impact assessment looks at when we talk about those things. So the applicants made the point of saying it's like they're two separate things. Although you might say the more delays that you have waiting to make a turn at an intersection, the more impatient you get, the more likely you are to make a risky turning manoeuvre that might lead to an accident. So I would suggest there is a strong correlation. But what we've said there, it's not that it's failing now, but we're saying we project that it will fail. Okay, it will fail. But it's already a problem intersection in terms of crashes, which the data has got.
Okay, and can I just, the last thing on traffic, was it a problem intersection when you dealt with the application for stage 1?
It was emerging as a problem intersection.
Okay, and you didn't think it should have been tackled at that point? It wasn't that severe at that point in your view?
Well, clearly we weren't proposing, we hadn't taken the step that there definitely needs an upgrade and that the school will definitely require an upgrade. But as a matter of the public record, and I would invite the panellists to review the last app application, this matter was writ large and considered throughout very extensively, and it even went so far as to note, and the applicant accepted that the subsequent traffic arrangements may ultimately mean that they will not be able to proceed with subsequent stages without an alternate access point being pursued, which Mr. Castleton has referred to in his previous deputation.
Thank you, Phil. You're assuming we haven't read the first application, but your assumption might be wrong in that regard. If we can just review the condition about public art.
Yes.
When I look at your policy, it appears your policy is intended to apply primarily when the development is highly visible from the public realm. That's how it reads to me. So given the second stage from next by there could be away, and given public art has already been factored into the frontage that is more highly visible, do you still think it's reasonable to require a full contribution under your policy? And do you usually require contributions for subsequent stages of each development?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, the screen's gone a bit blank then. You'll have to give me some of your audio cut out when you're asking your question, but I think I caught the tail end gist of it. The policy is not solely, the application of a public art contribution is not solely predicated on the extent of the visibility of the development from the road. It actually is based on the estimated cost of development, provided that you have a development that's generating visitation to the site of more than 20 persons. Or where you don't fulfil that, it may well be that circumstances dictate that you should have public art because the development site is highly visible from the street. In this instance, we have a site that's visible from the street, but we also have, as part of this stage, effectively almost a doubling of the student total school population. So as we say that art, and obviously you've got a new application with an extra cost of development. So yes, we do apply public art on a stage-by-stage basis, where the connection is between extra numbers of persons coming to the site, working, playing, etc. And clearly the development is over the threshold. And as you've already stated, it remains a development that's visible from the street. So it is appropriate to apply the public art. When an applicant is doing it in stages, we are practically open to negotiating with them, whether they want to put all of the art in a single, estimate their staging and put a single piece of art at the outset, or do it on a stage-by-stage basis with multiple pieces of art. There is that flexibility, but certainly the need and nexus under the policy is met by this application.
Thank you. Just finally, condition 15, the landscaping plan that you are asking for under that condition, do you need that to include details of reticulation?
The details of reticulation are principally where a proponent might be looking at utilising the city's verge for landscaping. It becomes less critical if that is not part of the landscaping concept.
Okay. And then looking at conditions 16 and 17, condition 16 requires installation of landscaping prior to occupation. Condition 17 requires implementation of the landscaping plan within the first available planting season after occupation. So which one is it? Should we delete one of those conditions? And if so, which one?
Yes, that's well spotted. In fact, I had this with one of the other staff that we picked up with, where they don't read. I think a single condition that would indicate that I think probably condition 17 will supersede and suffice in lieu of condition 16.
Thank you. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Any further questions? Yes.
Thank you. Just in relation to your earlier comment or your starting comment about the details within the GRA and particularly around conditions, are there any other conditions or details that you have identified that needs to be brought to our attention?
Through the chair, no, it was only, so the report, I can understand there might be some nervousness from the panel to say, well, what have we got in front of us, what haven't we? What I can assure you, you have virtually entirely the same report, with the exception of the condition on the contribution and the advice note that was inserted. So no, I can assure the panel there's no other salient material that isn't in the version that you have, that was in the version that I finalised.
I don't have any other questions at this junction.
Okay, I just got a few questions. There are a number of roundabouts along Beach and Marshall Road. Were they funded by council or developers?
Well, through the chair, I've been here a very long time, as councillors Zanino and Henderson will know, but I couldn't speak to that, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it's just that this area within which the school is located is obviously crying out for a roundabout, and there's a number of developments within that precinct that have contributed nothing to a roundabout.
I think
including the Malaga markets, which does generate a lot of traffic.
I think I've answered that question in the Regulation 13, where I said it may not necessarily be the case that any other development has triggered the level of impact on the local road network or an item or intersection or road in the same manner as what the school is. So we must always be careful. It's horses for courses, as the panel well knows. I can't speak to, as I said, I can't roll off the development history and what every application in Malaga that might have generated a substantial volume of visitation has been required to contribute to. But with respect, I don't think that's the salient point. The salient point is we have an application in front of us where the traffic impact assessment identifies volumes of traffic that affect the level of service of this intersection. We say to a level of with which it fails at ultimate build out of stage 2. The applicant says just on the cusp of that, and we say that that meets those requirements for them to make a contribution. Asking the question as to who did what over here and the rest of it, with respect, I don't think is salient to the consideration in front of us.
Okay, thank you. I've got no further questions. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you very much. Phil, the businesses along Masonry Way, what consideration has been given for their access to undertake their business activities, considering that the proposal is to have staggered times for people coming and going, and effectively blocking out the road access for significant times of the day during morning and afternoon. So has that been taken into account in terms of the impact on the businesses that are there?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, look, it is, I understand it's a very pertinent concern, and I'm sure it reflects some of the considerations that this panel, maybe not the same constituted panel, but this panel considered with the Henley Brook Islamic College and its impact on other road users and other access into other properties. As you will see, we have also recommended here an operational access management plan, where the proponent will need to produce that plan to look at how they can effectively get the traffic at peak periods for the school coming and leaving the school off Masonry Road, off the road network and into the site and stored within the site, so that we don't have excessive queuing on the road, which could lead to the obstruction of crossovers into businesses that give rise to the inconvenience that you have identified here. Now, that will be very much, given the difference between this school and the Islamic College in Henley Brook is that they are operating and that clearly their problems were manifest out there. This school isn't yet operational, so we don't know the extent, if at all, that we might have these issues and problems with queuing on the road network. All we can do here is to get ahead of the game, impose this condition with the same intent to get the traffic off the road, queuing, stacking, whatever you want to call it, parking within the site so that we don't have an impairment of the local road network. And I think that's all we can do.
So if I may go again, Phil, given that a roundabout isn't going to be built in a hurry and funding is not necessarily guaranteed from state or federal, perhaps black spot, but not necessarily guaranteed, we're going to see significant queuing down Bonner from the site, and that is going to impact for significant amounts of time during the day for the businesses along the road. That is my concern. So I don't believe you've got any certainty in your mind as to when that roundabout might be built, given that stage 2 might happen beforehand. Have you got some idea of if and when we might see a roundabout built?
Well, through the chair, the best I can say is what I've articulated in the report in terms of the estimated programming in the 28-29 financial year. But certainly what you're saying is that before that happens, you could have stage 1 operable, and then we'll see how how that happens. So we're yet to see whether or not the school will manage traffic in a manner that it minimises. I don't think it will totally eliminate, but minimises disruption or inconvenience.
Okay, well, can I just perhaps make a point then that already from Bonner turning west onto Beach Road is a bottleneck, and so that's already a problem. So I'm not convinced that even stage one is going to be a workable condition for business. I'm sorry, it's not a question, but I just wanted to see what your view was about that.
Well, certainly. But what we do know is an absolute certainty: stage one has been approved. So we can't revisit it. We can only revisit it as part of the operational management plan with this stage. But I'm sure that the school, being a good citizen, community citizen, will do everything it can to maximise the efficiency of its access, egress, pick-up, drop-off arrangements, so as not to exacerbate any inconvenience to their surrounding industrial neighbours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
Just on that issue in relation to the school parking, can you speak at all, and you may not be able to, about the layout of the parking? It's got a very long driveway that provides access to the parking area as well as the turnaround. That appears to be quite significant in the context of school. Quite often, school parking is really close to the boundary with limited on-site bays, but also on-site access. Do you have any comments in relation to that design in the attempt to minimise impact within the road network? As I say, according to the information we have, it can accommodate within that queuing area up to 70 vehicles in a 500-metre internal queuing space, which from my perspective is quite unusual to see a school provide such a long queuing. Do you have any comments, or are you able to make any comments about that in the context of impact within the broader the local network at the pick up and drop off period?
Yeah, certainly, it's an obvious benefit. What it provides is the capacity to stack or queue within the site, a wind around arrangement. So it's whatever. If I'm not quite certain whether you're suggesting that the long drive into the car park area might have some other collateral adverse implications for the function of the school. It may. I'm not aware of any, but it may. But what I can say, which is the clear benefit in the context in which you've cast your question, is that it enables, it can hold and stack a significant number of cars. And these aren't even cars that are parked, these are cars that are queuing. So it goes back to the intent that we're after here from the city, from a traffic management point of view, is to the extent there's going to be queuing, and there will always be queuing, we say we want the queuing within the site, not on the road. So this is a plus in that respect, in my view.
Thank you. That's my only question. Additional question.
You don't have further? Okay. No further questions. And we can now move into the debate and discussion on the item. Before we can do that, I will have to move a seconder. Do I have a mover for the recommendation before us? Yes, Member Page. Have a second. Member Lafanti. Yes, Member Page.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, I will support the recommendation for approval. Before I speak to the motion, though, I would like to move a few amendments.
Amendment 1.
I would like to seek to delete condition 16 relating to completion of landscape. It's a duplicate of condition 17. And condition 17 is preferred by the city.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Zanino, thank you.
I don't need to speak to that further, thank you.
Okay, any discussion on it? If not, I'll put that to a vote. Delete condition 16. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Amendment 2.
I I'd like to move an amendment to delete condition 22, requiring a further contribution to public art.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Member Lafanti.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Look, I acknowledge Mr. Russell's comments about the criteria and the thresholds contained in their policy. When you look at the aims and the purpose of the policy, it quite clearly sets out, in my view, that what the policy is trying to achieve is to achieve that activation on the front of developments that are highly visible and so on. So when you read through that beginning part of the policy, to me, what the policy is trying to achieve is not going to be achieved by imposing a further requirement for public art here. Public art has already been integrated into the frontage as part of stage 1. Most of stage 2 is located back from Mason Way, and I question the value of including public art within the site for that second stage. And I also question whether or not further public art would be incorporated into the frontage of the site to meet the requirements of the condition. I also question whether requiring a contribution cash in lieu to be used elsewhere is actually reasonable given the context of the site and the purpose of the policy. Picking up on Mr. Castleton's points, I'm less concerned about the not-for-profit nature of the development and whether they pay rates or not. That, for me, that's not a planning issue. None of that is planning issues that should be taken into account in making a planning decision. For me, it is there merit in applying this condition and enforcing the criteria of a policy that is a due regard document. I understand why the city seeks imposition of the condition. They have a policy and they need to seek to apply it consistently. But it's the role of this panel to determine and to discuss whether or not we think that there is merit in doing that at every point. So that's why I seek to delete that condition.
Thank you. A second amendment, Lafanti.
I concur with earlier comments made. I note that the building form typically on this proposal is towards the rear of the site, and I note that the internal arrangement of that proposal is somewhat different than the interface between the street and the broader public domain. From my perspective, this proposal has a substantial amount of area undeveloped and is given and provided by, and I accept it's an indicative a strategic plan, there is indications of more substantial development that can occur on the site. That's been raised today's meeting. There is a number of situations or a number of elements that need to be covered, but the longer term intention is to support a level of additional built form, which would include the interface within the street domain. So from my perspective, there is an appropriate mechanism for consideration of interface elements in relation to public art. And typically in this particular case, the public art is related more specifically to the school itself rather than, say, a broader town site or town area precinct. So I'm comfortable with the removal of it, given the design of the proposal, the location of the building, the strategic opportunity and the remainder of the site, and the site general site location within its context.
Thank you. Any other speakers either for or against the motion? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Just to make a point, if this process were to be applied, people could start a development, stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4 or 5, and only pay one contribution to public art, a small amount of money. Just to be clear, I've never supported the public art policy. I think it's an imposition on business and makes it harder for them to put their development forward, just another cost towards development. The thing is that the policy doesn't necessarily mean that the art has to be at the front gate or the like. The art can be at the entrance to the building to represent something of value to the students entering the school. The purpose is to from an artistic perspective, to lift the area both internally and facing externally. But that's just information for the panel. I thought would be necessary to understand that. But I certainly will support the removal.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Zelina, you wish to speak at all?
Through the chair, I think I'm not happy with removing it. I think it should stay. But I mean, it goes. I mean, but personally, I think in this instance, it should be retained. Excuse me, because it will have benefits. You're going to have a lot of people coming and going. There's going to be a lot of young people. And art is part and parcel of education. So I think that it should be maintained.
Okay, thank you. My view is that the condition should be deleted. I think that the imposition of these sorts of amounts are excessive for educational establishments. Some of the commercial developments that occur at shopping centres or other type of public works, they can certainly handle the costing. I'm also conscious of the fact that there are other developments to occur on the site, and there's an opportunity to impose a public art contribution on those. I think there is elements that can be imposed in the buildings themselves or within the realm of the buildings. I think that the design of the building has architectural and art merit in itself, so I'm supporting deletion of the condition at this stage. That being the case, I'll pass on back to the mover to conclude.
Thank you. Look, I will briefly close. I do note Councillor Henderson's point about developments that are staged over time could actually be not intentional, but could be a workaround for public art provision. So I do take that point. My view is public art installed deep within a site for the benefits of the users of those buildings is not really aligned with the objectives of public art, according to the purpose of the policy. And I think when stage 3 comes forward, if we're looking at a different road frontage with different access, it may well be justified at that point to seek a public art contribution on that different road frontage. I just think given the nature of the form of the development we're looking at today, I just don't think it's justified. So
thank you. Then I'll put the motion that deletion of condition 22. All in favour? That's 4 against, 1. The motion is carried. Any further amendments?
Yes, but as a preface to the next amendment, I don't propose insertion of a new condition requiring a contribution towards the road upgrades as part of this application. I do understand the city's concern about the traffic and congestion impacts that this school and almost all other schools tend to have on surrounding areas. And I also note that most of the concerns raised during consultation centred on traffic and congestion. But I'm not comfortable compelling a contribution from the school at this time based on the current information that this panel has on the scope of the works, the actual impact the school traffic will have. Mr. Russell even commented that he's not sure about what impact it will have, and therefore the extent of need and nexus for the contribution suggested. I also disagree with the city's officers that my view is it is not good planning practice unless there is a development contribution plan underneath that contains the design and the amounts and escalations and so on that you can rely on, to just have an open-ended condition that says you need to make a contribution without any amount is not good planning practice. So I disagree with him in that aspect. What I might float instead of a condition, I propose inclusion of some wording as an advice note that suggests the school should work closely with the city on refining the final traffic impacts. And once the school is operational and agreeing some contribution at a future time, either possibly as part of later stages of development. I think it would be in the school's very best interests to make sure that traffic and congestion don't impact parents and carers, and it's in your best interests to be a good neighbour and to work with the city to make sure that traffic and around the school flows and functions as well as it can. So I'm suggesting wording for consideration by the panel members for a new advice note that could read: the applicant/owner is encouraged to work closely with the City of Swan to determine the actual traffic impacts of stage 1 and 2 on the surrounding network once the use has commenced, and to agree a contribution to any upgrades required to the Beach Road and Bonner Drive intersection if the scope of works and any associated contribution required from the school cannot be agreed by the applicant or City of Swan outside this development approval process. The city or the development assessment panel may impose a condition on future stages of development requiring a contribution to road upgrades if required.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Seconded for purpose of debate anyway.
Further, I think I've made it clear.
Okay, look, I do have some reservations as well in regard to imposing this condition for an open-ended condition. I think the applicants have indicated that they're prepared to contribute, but they have got concerns as to the quantum, and in this case, it's very open-ended, the percentage. I mean, you know, we could find in a very short time almost a doubling of costs by the time they do all the necessary groundwork to establish what services or infrastructure has to be relocated. And of course, there may be horrendous cost implications and escalations. So I think unless there's some definitive amount that's stated, I think that it's going to be difficult to carry it through an appeals process as well. So I'm supporting the deletion of the condition and the implementation of the new footnote or advice note. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, panel. I'm strongly against this advice note, very strongly. The fact of the matter is that it was raised in round 1 when stage 1 was sought, that there would be a significant impact on traffic and that works would have to be done to mitigate that. In fact, a site visit was undertaken for members to have a look and see what the circumstances were. The bottom line is simple. Works will need to be done for this school to be able to operate effectively because there is a very dangerous right-hand turn across 2 lanes of traffic to head west. The fact of the matter is that the greater majority of that impact is going to happen at a peak time, people going home, and the school will need to access a significant portion of the traffic impact on that intersection. And the thing that I see here is that Mr. Russell touched on it, is that the 13%, yes, it's a little bit on the variable side. It's only 13% of the whole amount, by the way. The point of it is that the intersection needs to be built. So the city has done some numbers on that. The city's very good at their understanding of cost of roundabouts because we've done quite a few of them. And the funding expectation to build it through 3 odd million or more, a bit over 3 million, I think would be about right considering all of the works that have been done in the last few years. Now, yes, we know that prices do escalate to some extent. The point is we need to be able to say, okay, this is what the expectation is. Are we going to get on with it? It's going to be a driver for the school to be able to want to get on with it. Yes, there may be some up and down in costing, but I don't believe it would be such a massive impact on the school, considering that they're only paying 13% of it. So I'm strongly in support of having this 13% condition as a condition rather than an advice note to protect the ratepayers of the City of Swan, but also for some certainty for the school to be able to plan and get on and undertake their works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Anyone else wish to speak to the item?
I don't support the imposition of an advice note. I understand the sentiment and the thinking behind it. However, from my perspective, I do hold the view that based on the material we have in front of us, the school will create significant concentration of traffic at certain times of the day, and that whilst it's traffic within the site being managed, the traffic that flows onto the road does create a concentrated impact, and therefore it is reasonable that the extent of that impact also is considered through a discussion condition. So from my perspective, I don't support removal of the condition. I note the applicant's comment about this further ongoing conversation, maybe the language not completely final, but at this stage, I think it's a reasonably significant impact, significant change or increase to the school that would warrant some consideration of appropriate traffic controls within the public space.
Thank you. Councillor Zanino, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll just say a few words. I also don't support the advice relating that schools are notorious in generating extremely large amounts of traffic. Give it that it's not all day, but AM, PM, peak hour, they can create havoc. And there's numerous examples of this sort of thing happening on a daily basis all around the place. I mean, a classic example is Swan Christian College on Great Northern Highway, where the applicants, when in the early stages, categorically swore that it wasn't going to be a problem and they were going to have adequate parking and traffic wasn't going to be a problem, whereas now it is utter chaos, mornings and afternoons, and that's right on a highway. Give it, like it or not, it's going to, as I said, generate very large numbers of vehicle trips. It's going to have extreme congestion and excessive delays in queues. I think that what is proposed is actually beneficial for the applicants, and I think that they should jump at the opportunity, because waiting and having a look at, because it's going to happen. And then if you're going to have to address it in 12 months or 24 months or 3 years down the track, because they're going to want a third stage, and then having to say, well, we now require $3 or $4 million to, remediate the traffic, is going to hurt them in the hip pocket. So what is proposed at the moment, to me, is very manageable, and if it was me, I'd be jumping at it, but I can't support the amendment.
Thank you. Member closing comments, please.
Yes, please, presiding member. Look, I just need to make it clear that I'm not suggesting we delete a condition. There is no condition to delete. So currently we are not dealing with a condition in this report that actually requires a contribution at all. What I'm saying is I didn't propose to introduce a new condition. I proposed to introduce an advice note rather because of the way the current condition is worded. I did acknowledge in moving this that schools generate traffic and congestion issues, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't pay a contribution. I think the advice that I put forward is probably testament to my sentiment that a contribution should be made at some point. I just can't support inserting the draft open-ended condition that was provided by the city in response to our Regulation 13 request for some information. I would be more amenable to a condition that is more specific in what is required of the applicant, a condition that is less open to disagreement. At clearance time, this development could be placed on hold because the city and the applicant spend years disagreeing about what the contribution should be because it's not actually contained in the condition about what the expectation should be. So if there was a condition that came forward, or if a condition had been provided that was more specific in what is actually required, I would be more amenable to that, but I can't support an open-ended condition that we don't have at the minute. It's me suggesting advice note.
Thank you. I'll now put the amendment number 3 to include an advice note regarding condition. All those in favour? 2. Against? 3. Thank you. Okay, do you have any further amendments, member?
No more amendments from me, thank you.
Okay, do you now wish to speak to the?
I'm happy to talk to the substantive. I'm happy to support the application based on the information that we have in the report. I'm not going to spend any time discussing the suitability of the land use in the industrial zone, general industrial zone. This was dealt with when the original approval was provided to locate the school on the lot. I note that the proposal has been assessed and found to be compliant with the applicable development standards in the city's policy on industrial zones, and the state's operational policy on planning for school sites has also been given due regard in the application. The design of stage 2 was reviewed by the city's design review panel on 2 occasions, with the panel providing general support for the proposal and commending the applicant team on its design. I have spoken at some length about traffic. To me, that is the main issue associated with this development. I expect that the staggering of pickup times, the extensive amount of on-site parking to be provided, the access and operational management plan required by Condition 8 will go some way in ensuring that impacts on the surrounding area are managed and mitigated to some degree. And I hope there is an agreement at some point in time, whether it's at this meeting or whether it is at some point in the future, about a contribution to any road upgrades that may be.
Thank you. Member Lafanti is seconder. Would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, I support the proposal. I think that it's appropriate land use on the site. I won't repeat all the comments that have already been said about it. But I do note that the staging of the development is fairly commonplace with school sites, and that is not causing any issue for me. The industrial location is also appropriate for this nature, for this proposal. At this juncture, I would, however, like to move an amendment.
Number 4, yes.
It is a new condition. It is using the language that is included in the R13. However, it is a slight modification, so that is the basis of it. And it would read, prior to the occupation of the second stage of the school, which is subject to disapproval, the owner is to make a proportionate contribution of up to 13% of the city's costs of 1/3 of the upgrade of Beach Road and Boral Road intersection. I appreciate that that is not necessarily what the applicant may have wanted. However, I think it is reasonable and indicated today by the applicant that they want to be able to have a broader and more detailed conversations with the city. From my perspective, there is definitely an impact within the road reserve from intensification of a development, in this particular case, a school that has all of its traffic movement concentrated into set periods through the day, rather than general development, which has a movement of traffic which is much more spread out across the daytime or the 24-hour period of the site operation. So from my perspective, that is my proposed new condition. If I get a second, I'll speak there.
I'll just ask you
Could I
to.
get clarification, please?
Yes, we're just about to reread it, councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to be sure, was it up to or was it 13%?
Up to 13%. So I'll read the whole lot out. The condition that I'm proposing is prior to the occupation of second stage of the school, which is the subject of this approval, the owner is to make a proportionate contribution of up to 13% of the city's costs of 1/3 the upgrade of the Beach Road and Bonner Drive intersection. So I've tried to put some parameters into that contribution cost, so it's not wholly on the school, but it's proportionate.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, I was about to ask a question as well.
Could I just check whether or not imposing a requirement for 1/3 of the city's contribution, is that in today's dollars as per the estimate we have today, or is it at an escalated rate at the point in time that the development would come forward?
It would be.
Sorry, I'll just seek further clarification if I may. We're talking about 1/3 of council's contribution if black spot funding is provided. We may be linking it to the fact that the city may have to fund this entirely. And then the proponents 13% is 13% of, I think it's 5 million. So I think we have to be careful that we don't saddle the proponents with 13% of the total cost, but we're talking about 13% of the 1/3 if black spot funding is received. So perhaps we need to.
My condition that I'm proposing is 13% of 1/3. It is looking at the information we've got about the extent to which the school would be impacted in concentrated points.
So the wording, let's get back to it, is 13% of the
city's costs, 1/3 of the upgrade. I'm not buying into whether or not black spot funding is coming or not.
The wording then will generate it. So the wording might be better if it's 13% of 1/3 of the cost.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that it's ties it back to the fact that it's black spot funding 1/3. If it's not, then it's still 13% of 1/3, even if the council has to fully fund it.
So that would read, excuse me, for the minute taker prior to the occupation of the stage 2 of stage 2 of the school, which is the subject of this application. The owner is to make a proportionate contribution of up to 13% of 1/3 of the upgrade cost of the Beachborough Road and Bonner Drive intersection.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Yes, councillor Zanino. Yes, I'd like to expand on.
I think I've said essentially what I wanted to say in relation to the.
Councillor Zanino, do you want to expand on that?
Mr. Chairman, I concur with what Lafanti has said, and I think it's self-explanatory. I think we've spoken enough. I have nothing further to it.
Any other member wish to speak to that amendment? Councillor Henderson, thank you.
Look, I understand where you're going with this. It concerns me that the words "up to" are open to debate, conjecture, and the like. For that reason, I'm not satisfied that this fulfills the city's real needs, and I think if the mover was prepared to remove the words "up to," I'd be satisfied, because it should be 13% based on the road usage. So I'll just ask the mover if they're prepared to consider that, and the seconder. Otherwise, that is a concern for me.
Milifante, are you?
Comfortable in removing those two words.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Councillor Zanino, yep, okay, yes, the mover and seconder agreed to amend the amendment. Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, and in that case, I'm supportive. Thank you.
Okay, Member Page, you wish to speak at all?
Look, this amendment proposed gives more certainty. I'm assuming that at the point of occupation, more work would have been done on the design and the costing of this roundabout, and there'll be more certainty about whether or not there's black spot funding, given the timeframe that Mr. Russell has said. I have made it clear that I do have concerns about traffic. My concern was about the open-ended nature of a condition that just required a contribution, which could be anything really. So given Member Lafante's tightening of that wording, happy to support the amendment.
Okay, thank you. I too support the amendment. I think that it's a bit clearer now with the change on the 3rd%. It's a bit more defined. This school is going to attract extensive car usage because it's not surrounded by a residential catchment. And I think that in the first stage, I was on the panel, we discussed the issues, and whilst it satisfied a lot of the planning criteria, I think the school indicated that they were going to work hard to address the traffic issues that are going to be that will befall this site, and so I'm a bit more. I think that with the traffic management plan that they have to provide and a contribution to the roundabout that's a bit more defined, I think that it's going to hopefully resolve a lot of the issues. And I think the stage 2 development may in effect the roundabout may even be built by the time stage 2 is finished. Let's hope that's the case. So I'm supporting the amendment number 4. That being the case, I'll go back to the mover to close debate.
Well, thank you. The inclusion of a condition provides the opportunity to have the matters dealt with directly related to the school. And I would also say that from my perspective, any private school, regardless of its denomination, attracts students from quite a broader area than typically the local walkable catchment zone. So from my perspective, which therefore contributes to traffic movement associated directly with the school.
Okay, all right, then I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Who else is speaking? So anyone else wish to speak to the substantive motion for approval? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I thought Councillor Zanino was going to jump in there. Look, I'm not going to support this motion, and my reasoning is that I think some time has got to pass to resolve the issues that we'll experience from stage 1. And those issues are all to do with traffic and impact on Malaga business, which is what my major concern was going back at stage 1. The increased traffic volumes that we're going to see here will have significant queuing. There will be significant impacts, in my view, on the local businesses, and they should not have to bear that imposition. The fact of the matter is that the road system was designed for what I'll call normal traffic flows in an industrial area, and that's what this is. And the local businesses there should be able to get on and undertake their works in an unimpeded way. Yes, there is a long queue going in to the school, but the unfortunate problem is the long queue is on the way out. That long queue is going to be on the roads, and that's going to restrict businesses' ability to undertake their activities. For that reason, I think that the road issues all need to be resolved first before this should proceed. I don't think there's much more to add, Mr. Chairman, other than there's a significant imposition here. I think businesses could readily go broke. They might need to look at moving their businesses just so they can have access to a road network that should be freely available. So I can't support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Zanina, you wish to speak to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak to support the recommendation. I'm happy to support it with the inclusion that of the extra condition. And I dare say that nothing's going to be easy, and there are going to be problems along the way. But I think that if the applicants and the local authority, the City of Swan, work together collaboratively, everything can be sorted out. Nothing is insurmountable. So I think that as long as they're cooperative, the city is certainly cooperative. It's something that, you know, is needed, and we're happy to see it in that location. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. I too support the approval of stage 2. I do note and share concerns that Councillor Henderson has about the driver behaviour. I don't think the street system is such that it doesn't have a capacity to carry the volumes of traffic, specifically in Masonry Way. I think it's really up to the school through the management plan to work hard, and it's also unfortunately going to fall on the council to police a lot of the traffic that's queuing into that street. Private schools, as we know, draw from a large catchment, and unfortunately the short trips that students take by bike or by walking, that doesn't occur in this case. There's too far distance between the residential areas and the school, so traffic is going to traffic numbers will increase quite a lot with the increase in student numbers. So I think it's a policing issue and a management issue with the school to keep the traffic moving, and then of course once they get out onto Bonner Drive, then the issue there is going to be the roundabout. In terms of all the other issues, I think the design of the building is received good support through the design review panel. The conditions that have been imposed in terms of the operation of the school and future compliance with conditions, I think that it's a good outcome as far as the school goes, with the reservations of managing the traffic. So that being the case, I'll go back to the mover of the motion to approve, Member Page. Nothing further? All right. I'll put the recommendation as amended. All in favour? Against? 1. So 4-1, it's carried. Okay, we'll move on to items on the agenda. Item 4, DAP applications. There are none. 5, is that reconsider? Sorry?
Item 3.2.
Oh, yes, we do have item 3.2. Sorry. I didn't have that page open.
Tell you off.
Oh, yes, that's why we have the governance people here governors. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 3.2. We have one presenter, that being Vegan Cake. Usual 3 minutes.
Yep. All right. I'm here with Braden and Justin from Aspen Group. So if there's any questions that need to be directed their way, that by all means they can respond.
Yep.
As you can see on the presentation, we're here for post 12 group dwellings at 13 Elvira Street in Bybash. Before I jump into too much detail on the actual development itself, I thought I'd provide a quick overview on Aspen Group. Beautiful. Thank you. So obviously Aspen have a significant number of, I guess, investments in WA, and that's growing rapidly. Whilst they're not a, I guess, registered community housing provider, they are very much targeting the, I guess, the segment of the community immediately above that, the ones that don't qualify for government funding, but very much in the affordable bracket. So the people who can't afford your median rents, that's who Aspen are catering towards. And this site is no different in terms of the demographic that they're appealing to. Jump into the next slide. As far as the site itself is concerned, it was purchased from the City of Swan through a tender process. There were a number of units on the site that were in pretty considerable disrepair. So part of the sort of first stage of works that Aspen have done since acquiring the site is go through some pretty significant rehabilitation works with regard to communal landscaping on the site, refurbishment of some of the existing, as well as the communal facility, which if you go to the next slide, which sort of encourages that resident interaction and is I guess, vital for the success of the village itself. Let's jump on to the next slide. We did provide a few examples, and I won't go into any great detail because you've had the presentation previously, but just provides an illustration of existing assets that Aspen own in WA and I guess the median rent or average rent that they charge for their accommodation versus the median rent in the local area. Next slide. I have touched on some of this already, but just the overview of the site context. Immediately to the south is an existing group dwelling development. To the north is more sort of single duplex type residential development. The part of the acquisition of the site was obviously retention of existing buildings, part of the tender package that Aspen submitted. And sort of since acquisition, they've identified sort of areas of undeveloped or underutilized portions of the site, which is where this development and the proposed dwellings are concentrated. All access and parking is off Elvira Street through an existing approved access way. There are some sort of internal upgrades and additional parking being proposed as part of the application itself. So next slide. The group dwelling land use is an existing approved non-conforming land use. So the special use 26 provisions don't actually list it as a land use capable of approval, but because it had that land use approved when the original village was developed, there are those non-conforming use rights there. Unfortunately, full redevelopment of the site, which I think is what was envisaged by the special use 26 provisions, wasn't possible or feasible in this location in this current time with the construction climate. So Aspen sort of identified a way to sort of pick up and add to the site where possible, quite simple sort of modular type construction to increase the I guess the accommodation options for aged persons in this location. It does certainly work within the intricacies of the new Part CR codes in terms of the small dwelling approvals and sort of massages how some of the site area requirements are being met with exclusive veggie garden areas for units that don't get to that 100 square metre minimum site area requirement. And then in accordance with the provisions of the special use 26 zoning that I guess it qualifies for that R60 density, which is where the assessment was based on the site area requirements. As I said, there's another sort of 16 car bays being added with additional landscaping works proposed as part of a stage 2, which is more the back of the site. Stage 1 is sort of some of those works that have been completed already. Next slide. That's just an overview of the proposed landscaping. And then finally, I'll just wrap up on some pretty minor things in relation to the conditions of approval. Hopefully trying to modify a condition or the timing of condition 4, which relates to the notification on the title about the ANF noise contours. We're just trying to push that to prior to occupancy of the new dwellings, just so it doesn't hold up sort of any building permit timeframes. I know Landgate can be a bit slow sometimes, so we'd ideally like to push ahead and do this sooner rather than later and not have something like that hold us up. And then the only other one, which I think is just a duplication of deleting condition 12, which I think is just duplication of condition 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, panel members? It's Fanti.
Thank you. A couple of questions for you. Can you just confirm, I know you've made comments and the details we've got in relation to lot sizes. I'm interested in understanding two things. One, generally, the little kind of allotments work. And two, how do you understand or envisage they would work? Because in the event that this was to be separated, this is not for separating the site into smaller lots. So I'm trying to get an understanding as to how these tie directly to the exclusiveness of the sites that are in 100.
Yeah, correct. So as far as subdivision is concerned, there's no intent by Aspen to go down that path and carve them up, I guess, in exclusive sort of survey strata title areas. Aspen will continue to own the asset and manage it and invest in it over the course of time. As far as the site area and the exclusivity is concerned, there are designated, I guess, veggie garden areas that are allocated to specific units on the site plan, and the combination of those veggie gardens as well as the 60 to 70 odd square meters of internal floor space plus the outdoor living areas that are attached to each dwelling get you to your minimum 100 square meter site area requirement. And I think the definition under the R codes for site doesn't actually require the area exclusive to that occupant or that dwelling to be attached or pertaining to where the actual dwelling is. So the intent is that those residents of the new dwellings will have an exclusive veggie garden area that they can own and manage or connect to their existing dwellings by the footpath network that runs through the site.
And I'm kind of also intrigued about the veggie garden fruit plots. And you indicated this on the documentation we've got, but what are the restrictions or flexibility is probably a better word for occupants who may want to put a table and stare out into the, into the outdoor area?
Yeah, look, they might be able to use those spaces for that. I'm not sure in terms of
in terms of the leasing, when we get to that stage, that's will be the controlling document. That's what they can and can't do. So we've already got 36 people on site at the moment. There is a community garden that we put in as well. So that has rules and guidelines they have to apply by, but at the moment there's be restrictions in terms of what they can and can't do, but we look to implement some. So similar to apartment buildings, you can't have, say, clotheslines and things like that. That's probably the idea that we look for as well. So we don't have specific conditions in the leases for those because it's not created yet. But
thank you. That's it at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions of the presenter? Yes,
couple. So in relation to public art, I assume there's none on site at the minute, right?
No.
Okay. What are you looking at in terms of public art? Are you looking at including some public art proposal on the frontage, or are you looking at the contribution, or what do you?
Look, at this stage, we look to introduce it on frontage. So this condition's only come through recently. So we're aware previously that would have to contribute. And as you can see from the aerials as well, we've actually undertaken a lot of work to the area as well. So the clubhouse, it's not required, but we've refurbed that, put that in. So it's serving those the residents. At this stage, we're leaning towards some sort of frontage, basically. Very new in terms of that condition, but we would that. Plan B would be a mural of some description of the clubhouses.
I note the concerns. There were some raised during consultation about construction acts, and I'm not sure whether those came from residents existing or outside. But if we just look at your existing residents, what measures will you, because there's no construction management plan recommended, and I'm not sure that it's even required for a development of this scale. But what measures would you be looking at taking to minimise impact on your existing residents and on neighbours generally?
Yeah, look, I think the neighbours would probably be less of an issue because it's no real material impact. A lot of our residents have been through the process of 36 units getting refurbed. So they've we've already worked on site, worked with them. We'll have a build permit in place, and those along the lines, when they can and can't, builders can be on site and not on site, what they can't use, and then fencing off areas for certain safety requirements as well. So, if it helps, the residents are on board with the developments that occur to site as well. We worked with them previously.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Other panel members, any questions? If not, thank you for your presentation. Do we have Mr. Russell there still? Mr. Russell, any questions of Mr. Russell at this stage? Yes, Member Page.
Yes, please. Mr. Russell, is there any preference for these group dwellings to be retained for over 55 on an ongoing basis? And if so, what do you have in place to ensure that in time they're not thrown open to any cohort?
It's for you, Mr. Presiding Member. They're not restricted in that way by any condition. As Mr. Cake has pointed out, these units as group dwellings enjoy non-conforming use right, or a continuation of a non-conforming use. They are not part of a retirement village proposal or an aged care facility, which was the council's original intent for this land some time ago when it produced this scheme amendment. It sold the land without any such restrictions to Aspen. Aspen have a commercial open slather. Aspen have chosen to produce group dwellings. Whether Aspen chooses to tenant them to persons over 55 or not, it's entirely up to Aspen.
Okay, so that's not the city doesn't have a preference in that regard. Okay.
None whatsoever.
Okay, can I just check, is there a specific reason you've recommended a validity period of 2 years?
No, that might be, let me have a look through the chair. No, I think commonly 4 years probably should be more appropriate.
Okay, thanks. Is condition 10 a duplication of the intent of condition 8? So condition 8 says that the group dwellings must be connected to the drainage system, and then condition 10 talks about a contribution for the connection of the development to the drainage system. Are you trying to achieve different things with those conditions, or is it really just one condition?
Well, I suppose through the chair, you could amalgamate the conditions, but they are doing two separate things. One is you're connecting to our system, and one is you're paying a contribution for the upgrade to the system in the Midland District Drainage Fund. So one is a contribution, or a levy, if you will, and the other one is merely the connection to the system.
Right. Okay. In relation to condition 9, it says, and both conditions 8 and 9 say that they need to be connected to reticulated sewerage and to drainage. Do you have a time frame for that? Does that need to be prior to occupation?
Well, yeah, you won't be able to. Well, probably I would suggest by building permit, because you're probably not going to be able to. Maybe you won't get a building permit if you can't demonstrate you've got servicing connections.
Okay. And then the applicant has raised it, but do you feel that condition 12 is a duplicate of 4, or do you think that they're trying to do different things?
Condition 12 is a. Oh well, no, there's no dispute. They are a duplication. Yes, they are.
Okay.
We'll need to tidy up our condition vetting process. That's
okay.
my fault.
In condition 13, you talk about substantial commencement. Is that the traditional meaning of the word in a planning sense, or do you mean commencement of construction or commencement of use?
Sorry, which condition was that?
13.
13.
Yep, it says, where am I? It's about substantial commencement.
Does that help?
Is that to be,
Yes.
what
It
am I-
talks about it needs to be installed within the first planting season after substantial commencement. Do you mean substantial commencement of construction or commencement of use?
Well, substantial commencement, as we know, is a legally defined term. So, here's the thing. I suppose you could have a building permit issued, but you haven't substantially commenced the development. So the development is not, I'll call it, enacted. So development is enacted at the point in which development is substantially commenced, as we know. So the point in which they've done as much work on the site to constitute substantial commencement, from that point there, you'd be saying that's what the condition would be saying, first planting season after substantial commencement.
Okay. And then was I correct in my assumption earlier when I spoke to the applicant, you don't usually require a construction management plan for a development like this, do you?
In this instance, it wasn't deemed, given where the development is internal and to the rear of the site, accessed through their own private driveway. The city didn't feel it was necessary to impose a condition for a construction management plan. And I think you've heard from Mr. Cake that and the owners that they will be sensitive in their construction program to limiting the disruption or impact on existing residences, and I think that's sufficient.
Okay. That's it for me.
Thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Russell? If not, thank you, Mr. Russell, for your responses. We'll now move on to the substantive item and the recommendations therein. Have a mover for the report recommendation. Yes, Member Lafanti. Seconder. Yes, Councillor Zanino. Member Lafanti used to speak, please.
Yes, I am fully supportive of this proposal. It is, from my perspective, an excellent example of infill within an existing site. And I commend the applicant for attempting to keep as much of the existing stock as possible, noting that at the moment we are challenges in terms of timeframe of construction, and particularly given the nature of this development in terms of meeting a very specific and highly required need within the community. I'm comfortable with the overall design of the proposal, and I am supportive of the comments regarding the development site and the retention of the overall site in terms of no smash watering proposed, and the manner in which development has looked to incorporate the additional open space within each tenancies. I would agree with the comments that this proposal is unlikely to generate any particular concerns in relation to traffic and parking movement, given the nature of the site. At this juncture, I would like to move an amendment. One is to delete of condition 4. Sorry.
Condition 4, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Delete condition 12 and the reason is it duplicates condition 4.
Oh, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Zanino. Page. Yes, please speak to.
It's a duplicate.
It's a duplicate. Okay. Councillor Zanino, you support that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. No further discussion. I'll put the amendment 1 to delete condition 4. 12.
Delete condition 12.
Delete condition 12.
As it duplicates 4, so retaining 4.
Okay, all in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Any further amendments? No. Okay. Councillor Zanino, seconder, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Member Lafanti on her comments. It certainly is a great development from what can be seen. It meets all the zoning requirements. The context and character of the built form and the scale are supported and will certainly complement the area. And I think Yeah. The applicant should be commended on such a great development, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Any other speaker? The page, yes.
Substantive.
To the substantive.
Yes, please. I'm very happy to support the recommendation. I do have two further amendments, if I may.
Okay, Amendment 2.
Amendment 2 is to amend condition 4 that relates to the section 70 notification and addition of an associated advice note. And the purpose of those amendments is to clarify that if a notification is going to be placed on the title to alert prospective purchasers about potential aircraft noise, that notification is to be prepared and lodged to the city and with the consent of the applicant or owner. Condition would then read, prior to the commencement of use, the landowner shall provide consent to a notification pursuant to section 70 and so on. That states the slot is in the vicinity of Perth Airport and is affected or may in the future be affected by aircraft noise. The advice note would read, condition 4 is not imposing an obligation on the local government. If the local government chooses to lodge a notification under section 70A, the proponent's obligation is to give their consent to the local government's application and nothing.
Do I have a second? Yes, for the Fantine.
Just very briefly, and I think we've raised this, I'm not sure if we've raised this in a Swan meeting before, but we have quite recently received some advice that when the DAP makes a decision on placing section 70 conditions, it is appropriate not to require the owner to do that, but the onus is on the city to do that if they so wish to. They don't have to, but if they so wish to. And if they do wish to place that notification on title, they need the applicant or owner's consent to do that. And that's the purpose of these two, one amendment to change that condition and to add the advice note clarifying the purpose.
Thank you. Second, speak.
Said.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak on for or against the amendment? Councillor Henderson.
A question, if I may. From a recent viewing of the latest aircraft noise map, I'm quite sure this does in fact fall within that zone. I'd have to get it out to be absolutely definitive, but the point is, it's certainly a issue. I want to know, why is it, if it's an issue, why is it the City of Swan has to pay for it rather than the owner or the developer?
I'll go back to the mover who explained the reason.
Councillor, I do believe that information will be circulated to local governments on the advice that we got. There was legal advice provided that suggested that as per the wording of that act, the onus is actually on local government should you wish to place that condition. So yes, absolutely, it falls within that area, but if you wish to put a condition that says that there needs to be something on the title, the onus of doing that sits with the local government with the consent of the owner. So we're following that advice that we have received.
So if I may, what recourse does the city have to make this a condition for the applicant to pay? Any?
No.
I don't believe so, no.
Unfortunately, that's the advice we have been receiving through our, I think, Department of Lands. Okay. All right. Anyone wish to speak to the item further? This is is this the amendment?
We're dealing with the
We're still on the amendment. Okay. All right. If no one else wishes to speak, turn the page you wish to.
Nothing further on the amendment.
All right. I'll put amendment 2 to amend condition 4 as read out and advice note as well. All in favour? 4 against? Councillor Henderson against. So it's 4-1.
Thank you. And one more amendment to condition 7, please. And that's simply to change the requirement for the installation of public art or payment of cash in lieu to prior to occupancy rather than prior to submission of a building permit.
To occupancy. Yep. Okay, seconder.
The reason being submission of a building application is not a guarantee that the development will proceed. So it's more appropriate to require any payment or installation of art prior to occupancy rather than simply submission of the building plans for approval.
Okay, seconder wish to speak at all? No? Any other speaker on that amendment number 3? If not, I think we'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'll briefly run through my comments on the substantive. Happy to support. The proposal is really just seeking to expand an existing non-conforming use with the insertion of 12 small dwellings into the footprint of the existing development. Note the assessment the city has done against the relevant provisions of Special Use Zone 26 and the R codes, and they've concluded that the proposal meets the scheme requirements and the objectives of the different R code design elements, either via the deed to comply pathway or the design principles. Also note that the proposal has been reviewed by the city's design review panel on 2 occasions. Changes were made to the design after the first review, and although there were still some outstanding matters identified for action at the second review, these have been addressed in the table in the applicant's planning report and or will be addressed via conditions of approval. At its most recent meeting, the panel concluded that the proposed design is innovative, commendable in its ingenuity and simplicity, and highly sustainable as a matter of principle. I note that 3 objections were received during public consultation on the proposal, but these were well balanced by submissions of support and conditional support. The key issues relate to extra traffic and parking, removal of trees, impact on the adjoining reserve and construction impacts. The extra vehicle movements that could be generated by the new dwellings will easily be absorbed into the surrounding road network, and not a traffic engineer, but I think those were overstated, those vehicle movements for dwellings such as these. I note that the 2 trees that need to be removed to allow for construction will be replaced with 125 new ones. And that most construction impact will be internal to the existing development. So I think the applicants have been very well, have done very well in designing this development, and I'm very happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Zanina. Oh, you've already spoken.
Already spoken.
Sorry. I'm going well today. Any further discussion on the matter? I'll just support the proposal. And I won't reiterate a lot of the comments that have just been made. I think there was a comment made in the report at page 7 that the size of storage sheds, the city staff weren't satisfied and that they should be increased. And this is recommended as a condition of any approval. There was no condition mentioned in that. Mr. Russell, I just seek clarification from you. Do you need a condition on that? Russell there still.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Probably on balance, given the nature of these dwellings, it was, I'll be quite honest, it was a 50-50 proposition. I'm quite satisfied in the end that the could probably suffice without a condition to require that.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I've had my say. I wish to close debate.
Nothing further to add to it.
Okay, all right. I'll put the recommendation with 3 amendments. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Now I can get back to where I was heading before. Item 4, the form of applications. Item 5, no section 31 SAT reconsiderations, Part C. SAT applications support Supreme Court appeals that website. Item 2, with no further business, I will close the 3:13 p.m. and thank support staff, council staff and presenters. Thank you.
Thank you very much.